So I just finished watching Shohei Kondo's most recent video, The Real Reason for Japan's Declining Birth Rate, I believe it's called. And I just thought I'd add my thoughts and experiences from that. Not in Japan specifically, but it will apply, I personally believe, to a lot of places, with some obvious small changes for cultural differences and things like that. I can't say the explicit reason why it's occurring in Japan, but I will say what's happening here and many places is, for one thing, there has been a shift away from taking relationships seriously when people are at a younger age, and that has some pros, but that also has had a lot of cons, because realistically, if you want to fall in love with someone, you have to get to know them first, which is what he comments on, and I think that's rather astute. And that's also why I have in the past criticized online dating, because it's kind of going about the situation backwards, and I'll comment more on that later. But normally, when does someone have the most opportunity to interact with other people? In school, and when you're younger. So as soon as you start school all the way through to the end of university, that's kind of your window. You know, you have more activities, you have group projects, you have these opportunities to interact with a bunch of different people around your age, of the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever your preference is, but you can build relationships with people that way. As soon as it gets to the workplace, sure, you could have an opportunity to build a relationship with someone at work. Whether or not you think that's professional is a different story. And the downsides and risks associated with that these days. But that is nonetheless the case. So realistically, if you want to encourage more dating, especially for those that are, because you can't really do anything about, so there's a solution to encourage building strong relationships at a younger age, rather than just playing fast and loose with life. I think that would be a good general approach. But on the latter end of it, as adults, that's a big chunk of the population that's kind of, they're stuck here, so what do we do about it? Okay, so the biggest thing is just providing people with the opportunities for socialization, which, as people have noted in the comments of the video, and he himself kind of touches on it a little bit, that work gets in the way of a lot of stuff, especially in an economic downturn like we're seeing in most countries. But regardless of that, you don't have the kinds of opportunities to meet new people like you used to, especially with everything being online. There are fewer people going out and doing activities. Now, I'm not saying that we should go host a whole bunch of singles mixers and stuff like that. It could work, but generally speaking, as soon as you make it a dating event, it changes the tone and it makes it a lot more serious. People are less comfortable, and it's not really conducive to what your desired goal is. So my suggestion would be to encourage more events that are, whether it's the government funding these events or if the government's encouraging investment in creating these events. I have hosted a lot of events personally over my lifetime, and I like to think that people seem to enjoy them quite a bit, and that's because I try and focus on activities that are engaging and include people, as opposed to just simply having an event and hoping people will manage that on their own. Because as you've seen, for example, for fan expos and things like that, there used to be a lot more friendships built, things like that, because they were more interactive. Whereas now they've become more of a, you come, you see, you buy stuff, you leave. And the friends you have are the friends you brought, and you basically don't interact with anyone else. So including those activities that get you involved with other people, whether it's, breaking people into random teams and doing some sort of activity like that, or if it's competitions, etc., that will bring people closer together. So if you make these groups that are interest-based, that will help a lot. Groups, these regularly occurring activities, not something that people have to sign up for and lock themselves into, but things that people can come and go casually as they please, because, again, work makes life busy, and you only have the time you have. Any sort of commitment is going to put people off, right? Especially if you have to buy in. So I'm suggesting if you can try and not do that and just, push. The government can handle funding that, especially in Japan, if that's their goal. Advertising, making sure all that stuff works. That is one thing people can do, and that helps there. So as far as why online dating, I think, has been a real detriment to dating overall, is because it comes at the situation backwards. Instead of getting to know someone, then developing feelings for them, then asking them out, instead it's, we find each other attractive, let's get to know each other, and then go on a date. Online dating has a number of problems, especially for those of us who are a little bit more traditional, not necessarily in the sense of like what we think of for marriage, just in the sense of, I don't want to bang a stranger, so we're not just going to go randomly hook up and then build a relationship. And that doesn't really help for marriages either, if that's the goal. Or not even marriages, that's not even really going to be helpful for children specifically, because you don't have that safety net of having a partner, right? You just have a stranger. And with the text messages that they funnel you into, it doesn't help develop the relationship, because text is toneless, which means that when you're reading a text, a lot of it is what you project into that. And unlike a normal situation where you get to know someone first, you're trying to get to know someone through the text. And so by the time you actually get to meeting them, you could have built up an entirely incorrect persona and have an incorrect perception of them when you see them face to face. And that's going to be detrimental, regardless of whether or not it's favorable to them or not, because there is that disconnect, and you're reeling a little bit by just being like, this is not the person that I thought it was. So to that end, so as individuals, if you try to, as soon as possible, go on a date, that would be productive. However, I understand that there are risks associated with that, or at least perceived risks, because at the end of the day, strangers are strangers, no matter if you met them in person or online. However, if you want to be safer, what you need to do is try and push for that voice call or that video call earlier on, because it's a more engaging conversation. You'll be able to enjoy each other's company more. You'll be able to get a better feel for what the person is like before going on that date. So that would increase the success rate. It doesn't help the dating companies, though, if that happens, because they just want to rip people off in the worst and most abusive way possible. If the government started encouraging a certain approach to it, that might help. But ultimately, I gave up on that because it's not a good place to be, right? And you can pick out people that you actually are interested in person a lot better than you can online, because I haven't even gone into things like catfishing and fake accounts and all that stuff. In regard to what I touched on earlier, which is trying to establish and build and encourage stronger relationships from a younger age, so that people can build their lives together in a constructive way. Right now, at least where I live, relationships between anyone who is in high school are either condemned strongly or just disregarded in general. you're just going to get rid of him later. You'll get tired of that person. She doesn't matter. She's just a bump in the road. And that's not how it used to be a long time ago, where if you think of our grandparents, who most of whom I'm sure you can think of had very healthy relationships, some of which didn't, but there are always exceptions. And that's a different discussion. But while people are still in school, whether it's university or high school, there's an opportunity for families to be more encouraging to their children and help them build a positive relationship by giving them the tools to do so and trying to educate them rather than backing out of it entirely and saying, no, you're a terrible person, don't date anyone, you have your whole life ahead of you, you're ruining your life, etc., etc., etc. Because if you go about it the other way, sure, not everything might work out, but it has a much higher chance of working out if you can be like, I did that too once. It was not a good idea. You should try talking to them and work it out. Like, mentorship for relationships at that age here, I don't know about Japan, it just doesn't exist. It could, it should, because it also helps you avoid, unwanted teenage pregnancy, stuff like that. And the government's approach to that was simply to increase the education at school, but they also just went the demonize it route, largely. And that, again, is not necessarily productive, especially if you're a government wanting your country to be strong and productive and healthy and grow and not just disappear. It's an important factor, right? But moving on to what else Japan could do specifically, I do have a rather zany idea, and that is to encourage importing wives and husbands. And I don't mean you buy a husband online or kidnap someone, but I do mean finding ways to encourage relationships and facilitate relationships between citizens and foreigners. So there's a number of different approaches. But let's start with the rationale first. So around the world, there are a whole bunch of people who are very appreciative of Japanese culture. These people would be the least disruptive to that culture if they were to become involved or integrated. And if people in Japan don't want relationships with the other people in Japan for whatever reason, it may be encouraging to seek those elsewhere. So you may be thinking, well, that's a terrible idea because people are just going to abuse it and marry people for a visa and stuff like that. We're not quite talking about the same thing, but if you build the system with the problems in mind, not just ignoring them, it is a whole lot easier to combat them because problems like that exist as is. And what I'm proposing is more setting up the conditions for people to more easily develop relationships with foreigners who are within a desired bracket. So it could be educational qualifications, it could be knowledge, or just like, there are ways of dealing with it. But anyway, it would be beneficial in a number of ways. One, you can increase tourism. Two, you can increase the population by simply having immigration, but these are people who are not just invested financially in the country, they also actually have a life and a partner, and so they're emotionally invested as well. And that will really create a more lasting relationship and have them be more loyal to the country itself. So already, as is, there are a lot of people who have a relationship with a foreigner, rather domestically or abroad. So encouraging people to come back once they build that relationship, it could be a pretty compelling offer if you think about it, because if you say you have two people in the United States things are expensive, they can't afford stuff, but they do have money. If you make a little bit of a pathway so that they come home, they bring themselves what money they have to Japan, that's an immediate increase in resources for the country. And then also the chances of them settling down and having a child are pretty high, and they're having it in Japan instead of, say, the United States. So all of those things are things that could be done really in any country, but in Japan, if they want to increase the birth rate, I don't think it will necessarily solve the problem in itself, but every little bit helps, and these things contribute. And like Shohei said, it's a valid criticism that kokuhaku culture, which is a bit of a tongue twister for me at least, is one of those things, just like online dating, which can be a barrier.
Like a AT field.
Which he even says, which can be inhibitive to the formation of relationships. Because I'm not saying that it needs to be abandoned entirely. My suggestion would be simply like, one of the things about kokuhaku culture that I've kind of gleaned from media and from people commenting on it, is that the appeal of it, whether, especially for people that I know here, is it's kind of like a pre-proposal without having the whole worry about commitment for a lifetime. It's, oh, you like me? Fantastic. Or get
好きです。付き合ってください。
私に告白なんて、もっと自分を見つめ直してもらった方がいいわ。鏡見てよく考
Sorry. Anyway, so I can see the appeal. It's a very anxious, but well, he just anyway. I'll let you watch Shohei Kondo describe it. He does a perfectly fine job. I don't need to rehash all of that. But the point is that when someone like goes up and does a formal confession of love, which isn't that foreign for here, because that is sort of the expectation as well. You see it in a lot of movies. It's not done, again, as formally, but it is, or like doing something dramatic. I really like you. Will you go out with me? That doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Not everything is a drama, just like in the movies, but some people do. Like one of my ex-girlfriends was still kind of put out that I didn't say, hey, do you want to go out with me? It's like, we're already dating. So why would I just be like, do you want to go out with me? It's like, or sorry, not like go out with me as in like, would you like to go do something? I mean, would you like to go out with me as in like, would you like to be my girlfriend? And that specifically, it's like, you never said, do you want me to be your girlfriend? I'm like, we're dating. Is that not implied? Like, we have a relationship. There's no need to be like, hey, but I can understand that people might want that still, right? So what I'm suggesting, going back to where we were before my tangent, is that instead of having it be a upfront barrier to entry, it's more of a pragmatic thing. Like, it is that I want you to be my girlfriend thing, but it's after you've hung out a whole bunch and before the official dating, but you actually know each other, you like each other, you both know that. It's just a formality for the sake of your own enjoyment. It's weird to put it that way, but I think you understand what I mean. Because that way you're preserving that aspect of culture. People are getting that thrill, I guess, if you will, a little bit. People can plan it out, do something nice, stuff like that. But crucially, you actually have the key aspect, which is you've built somewhat of a relationship already, and that you know you have some sort of feelings towards each other. It's not creating this system of, okay, well, now that I've said yes, we're dating, but I don't really want to date them. Because that's not like, that's the whole reason for what everyone is saying about like, oh, you don't want to throw your life away by getting in a relationship with someone at a young age. It's like, you can make choices at your own pace throughout your life. But if you're feeling pressured to be in a relationship because of this, because you've agreed to go out with someone, even though you don't like them or know them, then that's the opposite of getting what is an ideal, which is, I want to be in a relationship with someone that I like, but in order to do that, I have to find someone and build a relationship to the extent of knowing that we like each other before doing that, right? Again, just like how online dating is a problem. So, yeah, like ultimately, it's not an easy problem, but there are a whole bunch of small things that can be done to improve that situation. So to recap, you have supporting and encouraging stronger and lasting relationships from a younger age, altering dating apps to be more conducive to a positive result. And then there's addressing koku-haku culture. You can't force that upon people, but you can show people a different way, and if they find it to be appealing, they will adopt it. But I do still think that there is value in keeping something like that, because every culture is different, but sometimes having cultural traditions is important. If every country were exactly the same, that would be a huge loss to humanity, merely because the difference makes the world a much more vibrant place. But anyway, moving on. And then, as adults, you have facilitating, running, funding more mutual interest events and activities. And lastly, you have things that are more extreme, like encouraging immigration and creating the tools to facilitate people more easily bringing their relationships home. The one thing I will note is to avoid doing what we've done here, which is to demonize long-term relationships and especially marriage. And that's not productive. Instead, if you do have a problem with marriage, specifically go after the individual aspects that you don't like about marriage and how to solve that instead of trying to abolish it altogether. Because as we've seen, that hasn't made people happier, right? Being single for their entire lives, it can be unfulfilling. Some people can be fine, but broadly speaking, humans aren't really built for that. Not to say humans are built for marriage. Anyway, we're going to go on from there. So, that's my thoughts on the matter, or some of them at least. And if you have your own, please leave them below, because, you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. You can tell me I'm an idiot. That's perfectly fine. If you are interested and you haven't seen it already, I would check out Shohei Kondo's video. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. And then, you know, you can subscribe to him if you just have an interest in Japan. He talks a lot about various topics and does a lot of videos on misconceptions and things, which is kind of interesting and entertaining, especially when he does the videos about basically explaining why some of the like trendy clickbait TikTok videos and things are just nonsense. So, yeah. Anyway, see you guys next time.